It's always a pleasure to have Rick Wise as a speaker, and we're delighted to have him back for his third talk. This one today is on the Battle of Hobkirk Hill. And just a little advertisement, if you're in town on Saturday is the 245th commemoration of the Battle of Hobkirk Hill. We'll be down, Rick will explain it's not really where the battle was, but it's where our memorial is for now. It's down in Kirkwood Common, and we built a little memorial there years ago, and a little funny story behind that. But anyway, we'll be down there at 11 o'clock with the wreath laying. Several DAR and SAR chapters will also be there as well. Rick Wise will speak again on the Battle of Hobkirk Hill, and then we'll have some refreshments and some other activities down here at 12. So you're invited to come back for that if you're in town, and just make a day of it, celebrating camping and celebrating our history. My name is Nancy Neal. I'm the regent of the Hobkirk Hill DAR chapter, and our chapter wrote a grant to bring some more history into our schools in Kershaw County, and then also to our community. And that we've had a series of these lunch and learns, and have been, like I said, delighted to have Rick for 3 of them. Somebody asked me at one of them, but she was from out of town. And the last one, this lady from out of town said, "Who was Rick Wise?" And I said, "Is he living under a rock?" But she knew who he was before she left that day, and was impressed, as we all are. But if you don't know who Rick Wise is, he's a native of Johnsonville, South Carolina, and a graduate of the University of South Carolina with a BA in History, a Master's in Secondary Education, and a Master's in Military History. He served over 23 years in the United States Army Field Artillery, and is a veteran of Desert Shields, Desert Storm, Operation Southern Watch, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was awarded the Bronze Star with the Oak Leaf Cluster and the Meritorious Service Medal with the Silver Oak Leaf Cluster. Rick pursues his love of military history through giving presentations and battlefield tours, was the managing editor of the Francis Marion Papers, and is on the Liberty Trail project team. He is the executive director and CEO of the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust. Rick and his lovely wife Paula live in Camden. We are proud to name him as one of our own. Welcome, Rick.
I don't get used to this thing that people are supposed to know. I mean, I will tell you, I would not be here if it were not for Charles Baxley, who I happened to meet, and by rubbing elbows with him, lots of good things happened. So thanks to Charles and the good Lord, here I am. Okay, yes, Kirkwood Commons. That's where Saturday morning, where the commemoration is. That is not where the battlefield is. Okay, sequence of events that I won't go into, but anyway, that's where the monument is up there now. Okay, the other thing is I'm not probably going to talk about the whole battle. I'll pick out a specific topic to talk about, because if I talk about the whole battle out there, everybody will have heat stroke, and we probably don't need to do that. Okay, and the other thing is I want to thank you all for being here. Now, I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you all for coming. So either what I say y'all kind of like, or maybe y'all are just looking for the entertainment. I'm not sure, but either way, I'm glad you're here. All right, so today's topic, and every now and then, I don't put on my coat and tie and jacket, because I put on my battlefield attire when I'm going out there, because sometimes it puts me in the mode of talking about soldiers and talking about events that took place 245 years ago. Even today, 245 years ago, General Greene and his army are here in the vicinity of Camden. How many folks have ever been to the archives before? Well, then you have been to Logtown that I'm going to talk about. And we're going to talk about that. Greene initially took Logtown, drove those guys off, and then the sequence of events that led up to the Battle of Hobkirk Hill. So let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, so you don't just show up somewhere, you got to come from somewhere. And so as we look at Nathaniel Greene has taken command of the Southern Army. He relieves General Gates in December 1780. He goes into action. He does something no one expects. He divides his force. He sends Morgan with his flying army over west of the Wateree River to spirit up the people in the back country. A couple of things happen over there. Hammond's old store, William Washington wins, and then there's a little thing called Cowpens. And with the Battle of Cowpens, that changes the paradigm. All of a sudden now Cornwallis is on his back foot because he has lost his light infantry that Tarleton lost there at the Battle of Cowpens. And as a consequence, Greene is going to join up with Morgan in North Carolina. Cornwallis is in hot pursuit. They do something called the Race to the Dan. The Dan River separates North Carolina and Virginia. So in the Race to the Dan is what's called a Fabian tactic. Okay, one of the Romans, Fabian, used that against Hannibal, in which you kind of tease the guy along. You're not offering him combat, particularly decisive combat, but you're trying to draw him farther and farther along. You're trying to get him to use up his supplies, tire out his troops, and basically to give up is what you're trying to get him to do. Greene does that, goes all the way up to the border of Virginia, crosses over, takes the boats with him. Cornwallis is worn out. He burned his baggage before he followed him. So he burned a lot of his supplies. He didn't have tents, didn't have any of that stuff because you're traveling light. And as a consequence, Cornwallis is now going to fall back into North Carolina. And oh, by the way, Greene was taking all the supplies with him ahead of Cornwallis. Cornwallis's guys are pretty well worn out. However, in passing through over at Guilford Courthouse, Greene saw a piece of terrain that he thought was defensible. And so after Cornwallis starts to retreat, Greene recrosses and goes after him, and they meet up at Guilford Courthouse. At Guilford Courthouse, Greene uses the same tactics essentially that Morgan used at Cowpens, which was a defense in depth. Militia, his regular forces, kind of cavalry out here supporting him as well. And as a consequence, he is fighting hard at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Now, in the military, what we talk about with an enemy or for yourself is what is your center of gravity? What is it that if you have or the other guy does not have is most important? So what Greene determined early on, the most important thing he had was his army. That you can fight that army, you can take some casualties, but you cannot afford to get caught in a decisive battle, to become decisively engaged. Because at the end of a decisive engagement, you have either won big or you have lost big. And Greene couldn't afford to lose big. So as a consequence, at Guilford Courthouse, right at the end of the battle, there was a chance that he could have won a major victory there if he had thrown in the rest of his troops. But he didn't. Why? Because he was a good commander who realized that he had too much to lose if it went against him. And so he always offered himself an avenue of retreat. He retreated. Cornwallis held the field. Guess what? He claimed that great victory that he had achieved. That great victory, he had over 25% casualties, which means at the end of that battle, he was combat ineffective. He couldn't fight another battle right then. Ammunition, food, he abandoned his casualties there on the field. He actually asked Nathaniel Greene to take care of his casualties by sending him a letter, and he starts that arduous march over towards Wilmington. They own the port of Wilmington, so by holding that port, they're able to get resupply from sea. So he can go and take his army there and rest and refit. So Greene now pursues him a little way, and actually in one of Greene's letters, Greene says that he couldn't actually go after Cornwallis because the Virginia militia he had with him, their terms of enlistment were up. And so he had to give up troops that were going back to Virginia. So where is he going to be able to find troops to be able to pursue Cornwallis? He's not. But what happens if you go back into South Carolina? You've got Marion, you've got Sumter, you've got Pickens, who had left his army and gone back into South Carolina. So he has militia sources that he can draw from in South Carolina. The other thing is, if you're coming in and Cornwallis is not coming back into the state, you got several things you can do. Or what if he does? One of the things is if Cornwallis turns and comes back into South Carolina, Greene is going to find a piece of defensive terrain and fight. Didn't have to happen. Okay? If Cornwallis stays in North Carolina and Wilmington, then Greene has a strategic plan. His strategic plan is to reduce the outposts. You've heard of something called the War of Posts. That is to reduce the outposts in South Carolina. And if he does that, he will slowly but surely push the British back into Charleston, which is his strategic objective. When he does that, he marches somewhere around the 6th of April from up in North Carolina. And one of the first things he does, he dispatches Light Horse Harry Lee with his cavalry in front of him, with his dragoons. His mission is to get into South Carolina, and initially the thought process was to join up with Sumter. Greene has written to Sumter. Sumter has kind of said a little bit, yeah, I'm here, good to hear from you, that sort of thing. But Sumter is not committing to doing anything. Light Horse Harry Lee has worked with Marion before, and when he gets into South Carolina, he writes to Greene and says, I think that Marion and I have a good relationship, so I'm going to hook up with Marion. And they did. And the first thing they did is they considered what to do is to go over to Fort Watson over on the Santee River. That's another one of those outposts, and that outpost secures the approach from Charleston coming this way to Canton. So if you take that outpost, you have now helped cut communications all the way back to Charleston. The siege of Fort Watson takes place from the 16th to the 23rd. On the 23rd, Greene is here, trying to reduce Canton. You're here on the night of the 19th. On the night of the 19th, he gives Captain Robert Kirkwood, Kirkwood Commons, named after him, the following order. And folks, it is difficult to be able to misspell things correctly. Okay, so Kirkwood is down at the archives. We think he's north of the archives, and he approaches about 6 o'clock in the morning. He starts engaging the British who are there. It's a collection of log buildings. Okay, and it's being used, and it's called Log Town because it's got all those log buildings. And as you're engaging those folks there, the intent is to drive them back into Canton. Well, he's successful. 6 o'clock or so, he engages them, drives them away. Oh, look something like that. And he drives them back. Now, what is between the archives and Camden at that time? You got a dirt road, the Great Wagon Road, coming this way. And also, from the edge up here of the football stadium, you go over right across from Mills Courthouse. That is where the jail was. The jail had been, it was a redoubt and fortified jail building that also has artillery there. And what you are now able to do is that is the farthest north fortification that you've got for Camden. Between where the Mills Courthouse is and the archives, they've cut all the trees down. Okay? And they just let them fall and be interwoven together. Why? That prevents cavalry from being able to approach well. It keeps infantry from having a direct approach to the gates of Camden or to the walls of Camden. It was a palisaded wall. And also what you do is you can have your artillery has a clear field of fire to be able to engage anybody to the north. As a matter of fact, the morning that Greene arrives there, he and his officers go over and there's like a brick kiln or something. And they're over there and they're trying to observe Camden. So they've got their spyglass or whatever. And about this time you hear you actually see a puff of smoke, and then you hear a boom. And then as they're standing there, a cannonball hits right in front of them where this brick kiln is or whatever. At which point they decided it was a bad place to be. And so they pulled back. Okay, so Green decides that they do the recon, and it's just too tough a place to go. So instead of trying to attack Camden directly, they're going to fall back, and they choose a sandy hill. Samuel Mathis called it the Big Sand Hill. It's also been called the Ancient Sand Dune. Hey, this used to be ocean floor back in the day. Hobkirk Hill was a sand dune for that time. Okay, this picture from about, you can see the horse up here. Let's see if I can point them out to you here. Here's a horse on the road. The road was supposedly about 90 feet wide. It doesn't look 90 feet wide from this perspective, but about 90 feet wide is what they say they expanded the road to be. And if you're going up the road here, if you're looking at the crest of Hobkirk Hill, it's right about here. So if you can imagine 2 6-pounder cannons sitting up there in the day, that's what the British would have seen if they went up Hobkirk Hill. So to the east of there, if you go down Littleton, go past Green Street, you got Johnson Lane that goes over there. If you go down Johnson Lane to the right, is the head, or there's a spring there, and that's where a lot of these guys are going to be. And I'm just trying to give y'all the lay of the land because, hey, y'all living right on top of the history. I keep talking about history in your own backyard. Here's your backyard right here. So everything is going well. Green is occupying this place. He doesn't dig in. You know, that's one of those questions, why don't you dig in or have some sort of fortification there? And I think he didn't do that because he wanted to have the opportunity that Rawdon may come out of his strong defensive work here at Camden and attack him. Because if you've got him out in the open, then other things might be able to happen. So that was a consideration, we believe. And the Myery Branch, okay, well, if you go over where the mayor's house is over there, that's the whole Myery Branch that we're talking about. And if you look at the pond and stuff going along there, yeah, that was supposedly going to protect his left branch, his left flank. He said it was an impassable morass. Well, possibly, but it was not an impassable morass if you came in a little bit farther to the south, closer to Camden. So everything is going well, but the night of the 22nd, of April, one of the things that is going to happen is he's going to find out that there's a possibility that Lieutenant Colonel John Tadwell Watson, commanding the Provincial Light Infantry with about 400 men, are potentially on the way to reinforce Cornwallis. Correction, Rawdon. Another battle of Cornwallis. Okay, so he's coming to do Rawdon. Okay? That being the point, what he decides to do is Green is going to send away his heavy baggage. He's going to send away his artillery because he is going to go overland to try to get in a position where he can be in between Rawdon and the reinforcements coming in. And so he's going to go about 6.5 miles from Upper Camden, Hobkirk Hill, to Lower Camden, which is right across the way over here. Looks something like that.
You're here.
There we go. Okay. So he is going to march down here. He's going to cross over, the little Big Beaver, Pine Tree Creek, and he's going to have his pioneers build a road, essentially, to go across there. He's got to put down some corduroy where you fell trees and put them side by side so you've got something to be able to walk on and that sort of thing. And so he moves, and he goes all the way, wrong button again. He goes all the way out here. Okay? That's Paint Hill. Paint Hill, that's kind of the intersection of Precipice Road and Highway 34, which is the Bishopville Highway. You didn't know that was out there, did you? Old Paint Hill, right there. He also is going to try to engage several of Rawdon's other posts here. He's going to come down here. There's a Watery Ferry House. They burned the Watery Ferry House. They come to Rawdon's Mill. They have an engagement there, but they're driven off because Rawdon sends reinforcements to come out and help them out. And so they're just actually going to come back up in here. But somewhere around the 23rd into the 24th, it's determined Rawdon's not coming. Intelligence has come from Marion and other folks saying, hey, Watson's still over in the Georgetown area. We have good intel he's there, so he's nowhere close to Camden. So as a result, what you're going to have is Green is going to return on the 24th back to his camp up here on the crest of Hobkirk Hill. Okay, so Green thoughts, hey, we're going to be prepared. We're going to lay constantly on our arms, meaning, hey, we're going to be ready to mount up and do what we need to do immediately. And what he then does, he's wanting to entice Rawdon to come out. He's going to show a little bit of weakness, maybe, but the whole intent is he wants to get attacked himself because he's in a strong defensive position. Okay, these are the troops that he has. Okay, you got the Virginia Brigade under South Carolinian Colonel Isaac Huger. Okay, you got about 400 on each side of the road, Continental soldiers. You got the Virginia Brigade, then you got the Maryland Brigade over on the east side of the road, and you got a strong picket force put out. You've got Captain Robert Kirkwood with his Continentals, but you also have two other Continental detachments of light infantry that are out there doing some picket duty. The thing is at the time that he goes back to Hobkirk Hill, he does not have his artillery, he does not have his supplies, and these guys are totally worn out. They've just marched from North Carolina. They got here, they went into action, they moved out and did other operations trying to protect against an attack from Watson, and also to engage other facilities around the Camden area. And now they have come back and they have lacked for food for about 3 days. They've had minimal stuff. It's not like they're well fed at all. Hey, they don't have rum with them. Rum was kind of the sustenance of armies back in the day. And not only do they not have rum, hey, they're still drinking that brown water stuff. The same thing that these armies have suffered from for a long time. So next time you pick up a Coke, be happy. Now there you go. What's Rawdon thinking about? Oh, by the way, over here, Colonel Francis Ward Rawdon. He was said to be the ugliest man in the British Army. I know, so Dale Watson does, like Dale Watson did the illustration we have a Logtown there. He has also done stuff that shows Rawdon, and I cannot get him to ugly him up enough. I think it's an artist thing. You don't want to offend anybody. Okay, so Rawdon is a very, very good commander. He is 27 years old. He has done exceedingly well commanding the ground forces in South Carolina since Cornwallis went on his pursuit of Greene. And what he does here is he looks at it and he says, well, I don't have enough supplies to sustain a siege. He's also received word that Fort Watson has surrendered. So his communications or his path back to Charleston is now compromised. That's a problem. You can't expect supplies to come flowing in from Charleston or Georgetown to help him out now. The other thing is, right across the river, somewhere over there, is Thomas Sumter. He can't really rely on Light Horse, Harry Lee, and Marion right now because they're just closing out the siege of Fort Watson. But you have Sumter that is not engaged, that can bring supplies, can bring reinforcements. Rawdon realizes that. Greene also realizes, but you know what? It didn't happen. But one of the things that did encourage Rawdon, was a deserter came in the night of the 24th, somewhere early on the 25th. And when that deserter comes in, supposedly a drummer, continental drummer, goes in and he tells a story to Rawdon that, yeah, Green's up there. He doesn't have defensive positions. He doesn't have his artillery. They don't have supplies and haven't eaten well in the last several days. That might be one of the reasons he deserted. Okay? And he tells Rawdon this, and Rawdon is, okay, looking for something to happen. What should I do? I can't wait here. I can't retreat without at least having some form of engagement. This may be the time. I can attack them, and I can attack them before they have their artillery here, which gives us an advantage. I can also attack them by surprise when they don't suspect it. When do you attack? Early in the morning. So instead, he decides he's going to attack and surprise Green. Okay, what does he have to draw from here? He's got about 900 men all told. Now in the Army, we used to talk about the sick, lame, and the lazy. Well, that's about who he's got. He's got some good troops, but he even gets to convalescents, guys recovering from wounds and disease. Anybody that can carry a musket and walk, hey, he arms them, he puts them under a Captain Robertson, and those are the convalescents. They're the guys marching up here. Okay, then you're also going to have provisional troops, okay, or provincial troops, excuse me. That's most of his guys. He's got some regular folks. He puts folks in the redoubts, and the invalids that can't walk, African Americans, he's putting them in the redoubts to man the guns and that sort of thing. And he orders a march at 0900 the morning of the 25th. Because he's got patrols out, those patrols don't come back in on time. So he doesn't march until after 10 o'clock. So if you can imagine, that morning you got the palisaded wall of Camden over here. He forms his troops up. He gives them the order of march, and they march out of the gate, going south. Well, wait a minute. Green's up there. Why in the heck are they marching south? In armies of the 18th century, when you marched out, you marched out with drums beating. You marched out with your colors flying, fixed bayonets glittering in the sun, and it was a spectacle to see these guys march out. That morning, they marched out with no drums, no flags unfurled. They marched quietly until they got out of sight, and then they cut down Little Pine Tree and over to Big Pine Tree Creek, and they started going north to achieve that surprise they're looking for. They didn't want anybody in Camden to be able to say that his army had marched out, head north, and be able to alert Green. As a consequence, now they're going to be able to go up with a plan, and they've got guides, and the guides could tell them, yeah, that impassable morass, you can get through it. And the idea is you're going to come up right alongside the creek, and you get up beyond Green's flank and attack his flank and rear. The guide, we don't know if he did it by design or if he did it by accident, he turned too quick. There's another creek there, and perhaps he turned too quick. But however, how many folks have eaten at the Hale Street Grill?
Yeah.
You could have watched Rawdon's army march right past there, right along the edge of the creek. And then they would have started angling in right about where the old mill is. There's now a medical facility, and start angling up that way. And when they did that, they're marching, expected to make contact any minute. Hey, they're still over about 3/4 of a mile away. And so they go up and they make contact. Somewhere around 11 o'clock. Sounds like the kind of weather we're having today, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A beautiful April day in South Carolina. Rawdon takes his march, and when he comes up, he makes contact with the pickets. You actually, the rectangle, blue rectangle up there is, that's Kirkwood. You had Pickett's Ford and you had Kirkwood with his 40 guys were back there. And when they make contact, Kirkwood moves up and they start engaging these guys and delay them. According to which side you're on, everyone says that Kirkwood and his men did a good job of delaying that attack. If you talk to the British, they said they went right through them. So one way or the other, they're coming towards Green's army. So as they go here, as Kirkwood is delayed, Green is now alerted. So let's put yourself in the Patriot camp. These guys have been starving for 3 or 4 days. They go out that morning, they do the training ritual that they do. As soon as they have finished that, the Green had called Colonel, Carrington had the artillery. It was his other guy, his logistics guy. Anyway, when they left to go out to Paint Hill, they had sent their baggage and their cannon away for safety. They wanted them to move, I think it was about 20 miles over on Little Pine Tree Creek. They actually went farther than that, an extra 7 miles. So as Green's coming back, he sends a messenger who finally finds them and says, hey, you guys need to come up. They expected them the night of the 24th because they had that extra 7 miles to march. They had actually camped a little bit farther to the north than where Green was. And that morning they came up, and all of a sudden, after you've done your training and whatever, you now have supplies. Hey, happy times. So what happens is they go out and you got your position. If you're going to have a defensive position, you're in formation and you're standing in formation with your guys, and they do ground arms, and they secure their stuff and they ground arms there, fall out. Your weapons are now in formation. So all you have to do is run back to your weapon, and everybody is falling in, you secure your weapons, and you're now in battle line. So pretty good thinking. The horses are still saddled. Green orders double rations to everybody and rum. So these guys, you can only imagine how good that bacon smelled frying. You can only imagine that 4 ounces of rum, that probably went down pretty good too. And these guys, this is the first time they've had a break in the last the last couple of weeks. Okay? Some of them are trying to fix the holes in their socks. Some of them have gone down to that spring on Johnson Lane, and they're washing dishes and trying to wash out some clothes, and they're taking their shoes off and airing their feet out a little bit. When in the distance you hear pop, 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 pop. Okay, what's that? And then you hear boom, a volley. We got business. These guys start running back into formation. And as they run back into formation, some of these guys don't even stop to take their shoes. They're just trying to get back to where they are. And by the time they get there, they can see the advance. Now they say that the wooded area that was below Hobkirk Hill there, they said you could barely see over 100 yards through the woods. So it's relatively thick. But through seeing the gun smoke and hearing the sounds as things are coming forward, now, as a matter of fact, all the gunshots are likely just coming from the pickets. Rawdon says that he put the King's American Regiment to the front and the 63rd Regiment, and that he was driving them with the bayonet. And that's what these light infantry guys were doing. They would shoot, fall back, take another tree, shoot some more, and fall back. So as we look at this, we're kind of wondering about how it would be. I've worked on maps for a long time here, and I still don't have the maps I'm going to be, the maps I'm using here are some that Charles and other folks did a long time ago. but we're about got the maps ready to kind of show this a little bit better. But what is going to happen here is Rawdon is attacking on the narrow front. He doesn't say exactly how he did this. He doesn't say he had 2 units, the King's American and the 63rd in line and the others in column behind them. But if you did that, as soon as you wanted to, you could shift these guys to the left and everybody just falls into the line and you extend your line all out. Does that make sense? Okay? Because, you know, it's all about maneuver and deployment. That's why these guys marched and trained all the time they did. But anyways, what happens is Greene looks down the hill. Oh, by the way, Greene also wanted to enjoy breakfast with his officers. And he said that he was in his tent with his officers enjoying a dish of coffee. Now, I don't know, you know, I can only tell you about my grandma. My grandmama lived to be 100, and when she got her morning coffee, she had it in the saucer. She would tip it over into the saucer and then drink it out of the saucer. I'm like, Grandma, why'd you do that? It cools faster. Okay, makes sense to me. Love my grandma. Anyways, but so Greene is now up and he's seeing what's happening. And he sees that the British are attacking on a very narrow front. Well, every commander has visions of Hannibal. Double envelopment, complete defeat of the enemy. Okay, so what does he do? He orders, as he's looking down the hill to his west, you got the 2nd Virginia and the 1st Virginia. He orders the 1st Virginia to wheel. Got the 1st Maryland and the 2nd Maryland on the other side of the road. He orders the 2nd Maryland to wheel to come in on their flanks. He then takes Washington, his commander of cavalry, and sends him to the rear to hit him in the rear. General Burns, does that sound like Hannibal to you? The Battle of Cana. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so he's doing that. He's going to go and trying to attack Rawdon's flank and rear. Did I tell you that Rawdon was a very good commander? Rawdon immediately recognizes what's going on. Okay, this is an old map, and so disregard this. I had to blank it out. Okay, so what happens is you've got Rawdon sees what's happening, so he realizes he has got to extend his front. So he sends the King's American and the 63rd Regiment farther to the left. And they're going to get to the road, Broad Street, and cross it. Folks, the map I had up before, this is the Valency map. An officer who was with the Volunteers of Ireland the day of the battle, he did this map. And everybody that I know who is anybody has looked at this map here and said, okay, well, nothing happened to the west of the road. I mean, it was like, you know, was there a wall there? How do you do that? Okay, since then, archaeology has shown us that significant action took place west of the road. So as we look at this, it's causing us to relook the battle. Nobody says, yeah, we went west of the road. Okay, so we're having to use archaeology to be able to determine some of those things. But what we do know, that you see where the artillery is up here, the artillery had come into place right before this attack. And as soon as these guys hit the road, they got hit by a grape shot. So big shotgun canisters of iron balls that took a toll, particularly on the 63rd Regiment as they're crossing. Rawdon's first thought, and it actually is written, that Rawdon's first thought was to get the drummer that had deserted and hang him. I mean, hey, we're being serious. He was going to hang him. Instead, what he does, he looks out and he pushes these guys across that, and by extending to his left, and by taking the folks who are in the second line or whatever and bringing them up and extending to the right, he now actually goes out beyond Greene's flanks. Now, we're talking about 900 men, so yeah, there's got to be 3 or 4 yards between them. I mean, you got about 500 yards to the ridge that's over on the west side and 800 yards on the right side. So yeah, if you got 1 man per yard, you know, you got to extend a little bit to be able to do that. But in the process, several things are going to happen that make this a little bit iffy here. First of all, the artillery fire. Rawdon sees that the line is altered, that Rawdon's got a little bit of trouble there because of the artillery fire, and so he orders his middle regiments on the west side of the road. You're going to have, I have my map up on the west side. Well, we can fix that. Okay, he is going to have these guys come down, and these guys come down at trail arms. Okay, they got their bayonets fixed, and at trail arms, you are carrying your musket at an angle like this, and you're marching with your musket. It's not presented to fire. It's not up here on your shoulder. It's at trail arms. The guidance to his soldiers was, do not fire. We're going to go downhill, pick up momentum, and use the bayonet. The bayonet was a shock weapon at the time. That's what they wanted to do. So you got Campbell up here is coming down, Ford is coming down, and the other folks are coming right down on top of Rawdon as he approaches. Sometimes you get so attached to people who are your commanders or whatever, that affects your judgment when things go bad. As the 1st Maryland is going down the hill, on the right is the 1st Company. So you got Captain William Beatty is their commander, very much beloved. And as they're going down the hill, he takes a rifle shot to the forehead and falls dead. When he falls, his officers and other folks go to him, hoping he's okay. He's gone. So discipline would tell you that what you do is the second in command, whichever lieutenant it is, says, follow me and drive on. Instead, the whole company stopped. Everyone else is starting to go down the hill, and they're looking, and their right flank is now getting uncovered. So this is causing problems. Rawdon is seeing that there's a problem. He starts sending some of his troops towards where the problem is. Now these guys see that the soldiers are approaching them, and some of them, against orders, start firing, and it's a ragged exchange of fire. And the folks that are over here in the 2nd Maryland, they're now seeing that there's a problem. There's a hesitation. And then Colonel Gunby, the commander of the 1st Regiment, makes pretty much a fatal error. If you were an offensive commander, one of the things you have to do in a situation like that, you would tell the first company to get their butt in gear and get back in line, take command of these guys and push them forward. Instead, he gave the command for them to fall back and regroup. The command was misunderstood. So instead of falling back, these guys reverse march and start marching back up the hill. And when they start marching back up the hill, now everyone down the line wonders what has happened. Was there an order to retreat? The British rush into that void. Greene sees what's happening, and he realizes, hey, what is his center of mass? Anyway, his army. He's got to protect his army. Things are holding okay with the 2nd Virginia on the road. 1st Virginia is brand new. They're seeing, as Greene came around the flank, Greene, first of all, hits Coffin's cavalry and pushes them off. And then he hits a whole gaggle of stuff of people that are coming down the road. There's an opening there, and he hits them. These folks are doctors, they're musicians that are gonna help the doctors out carrying the stretchers and stuff. They're bakers, they're cooks, they're everybody else that are just coming to try to help. And Green, instead of hitting and saying these guys are, of no danger, he cuts up and goes, instead of going up into the rear and affecting the battle, he stopped and took about 200 prisoners. But the moment was lost. So at the conclusion of that, a lot of these guys are traipsing across the road over there, and it's a whole bunch of people running. The folks in the 1st Virginia look over here and they see all these guys and they don't know that they're just a mob of people that have no coordination or whatever. And so they start falling back themselves. At that point, Green realizes, hey, you got to save your army. Okay, so your center of gravity, your army, you've got to do that. And so he orders a retreat. Oh, by the way, one of the things that Washington's guys did, they took 50 prisoners and put them up, you got a prisoner riding behind you. Can you imagine trying to engage somebody with your saber, and that was Washington's favorite weapon of choice, while you got somebody behind you saying, hey, don't do that, hey, don't do that. That would not be good. And this is more Dale's work here, and that is showing the 2nd Virginia going up against the King's American and the 63rd Regiment. Over here is where you have Washington coming down and hit Coffin, and then come down and hit these folks. But in the process of doing this, the British are starting to concentrate against this gap right here, and they're going to split Green's forces. As that is happening, Green is very much engaged. Okay, this guy, as you can tell, he was a little bit rotund, not much, but a little bit, and he walked with a limp. Something you may not know about General Green. General Green formed a regiment in his home state of Rhode Island. And General Green, when he formed that regiment, was not elected as one of the officers. He had a problem with one of his legs, and all his life he walked with a limp. And they did not think it was becoming of a commander or one of the officers to walk with a limp. So therefore, he did not get a position as an officer. So guess what? He joined as a private. He served as a private later on, and he was a self-studied guy learning military science. He read a bunch. And he caught the attention of George Washington, and he also caught the attention of other leaders once they started seeing that there was somebody that actually had some military acumen about him. And over the course of a very short period, he was now a brigadier general. And then he caught Washington's attention more so, and Washington, if you study him, he will tell you that Greene was probably his favorite general officer commander. So much so that he asked him to take on a very thankless job after Valley Forge. He asked him to take on the job of being the quartermaster general for the Army because it was in dire straits. Greene didn't want to do it. He said history does not know a quartermaster. Okay, pretty accurate. Okay, but Greene did it. If Congress had asked Washington who to send south after Camden, it would have been Greene. Congress didn't ask him, and they sent Horatio Gates. Afterwards, Washington kind of made sure that Greene was the next guy in line. It was very, very well done. Greene was a very good strategic commander. On the battlefield that day, he was with the 2nd, right behind the 2nd Virginia, pushing them, helping them in that process. And then when he realizes that things were going south, Actually, they're going north. But anyways, when it does that, Green now goes up and dismounts and starts to pull the cannon off. He's trying to save his artillery, save the guns. And as he dismounts and he's trying to do that, some of his men come up and said, you know, General, get back on your horse. We've got this. So he gets back on his horse and they start pulling these guns. The horses have been killed, or else people seeing it's a retreat have cut the traces on the horses for the artillery and they're riding away. So now you've got gunners and other folks are grabbing the trace lines and they're physically pulling the cannon. And if you've been up the Hobkirk Hill and you know you go up the hill and you kind of go down and go towards the railroad track and over towards the food line, you're pulling that cannon up the hill and then down the other side. Okay, that sucker wears a 6-pounder. It's somewhere with the trail, with the carriage and stuff. It's somewhere around 1,100 pounds. Okay, so they're doing that and they're trying to get away. Coffin's cavalry. Coffin is New York Volunteer Cavalry. Okay, they come up and they're going to stop this. And in comes Colonel Smith. Let's see. Smith was here and actually came up into here, and now they're trying to get out of Dodge here. Okay, so Smith's light infantry. Yes, I think his name was John. Smith's light infantry comes up, and they are now protecting. And as they're protecting the folks that are that the British cavalry are trying to get after, when they go up and engage, the light infantry gives them a volley, drives the cavalry off. They go a little bit farther, same thing. They drive them off. The artillery over that's across the way, if you know where the mansion is over here, that's on Green Street on the east side that's for sale. That 6-pounder was probably sitting in the front yard of that mansion. Anyways, when you go over there and you do that and you look at that situation, they tried to pull that cannon off over there, and we think that that was the cannon that got pushed down into the bushes. Okay, so the British couldn't find them. So as we go along here, again, the British are trying to stop the retreat with the cannon. Washington, by this time, has made a circuitous route, and he is now able to engage. But not before the light infantry pays the price. Smith's men stopped at least 3 times, fired a volley, and drove the cavalry off. The last time, there was a ragged exchange of fire. And so they didn't give a solid volley. It was pop, 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 pop. And with that, the cavalry were in amongst them. Smith's light infantry, every man was killed, wounded, or captured. Smith himself was wounded and captured. They said they stripped him of everything except his underwear and his commission that he carried on a string around his neck. And I got something else to tell you about Smith when we get after this a little bit. So the Patriot retreat, it is an orderly withdrawal. Hey, it is not a rout. It is not a panic retreat. And so, yeah, all the stuff I just told you. Anyway, Green is going back to Sanders Creek. So Sanders Creek is a natural defensive position right there on the road. So that's where he's going back to. Then, as they fall back there, it's not as clear what has actually happened to all the Army. The Virginia folks on the left side of the road, they don't go out to the main road, which is the Great Wagon Road, and head out like you're going towards the battlefield and Sanders Creek. What they do is they go cross country. They're actually going through, they said they went through basically woods and swamps and everything else. They're going cross country, so they're not on the road because they figure the British will concentrate on the road, which is true. And so you've got the Maryland folks are going down the road, the Virginians are going around, and made it all the way to the old battlefield at Camden. At which point they ran into General Greene, who was looking for them. And so they were very happy because they didn't know where the rest of the army was. So they were able to get the army, and they will be able to reunite them there at Sanders Creek. Later on, Greene wants to figure out what's going on, so he sends William Washington with his cavalry and some infantry back up the road to be able to find out what's going on. What we think took place there, and we're not sure exactly where the location is, it could be very close to Sanders Creek, but one of the things that we do know is that Washington exercised one of the favorite ruses that cavalry will use. They went up, when they got close to where they thought the British were, he pulled his infantry and his cavalry off to the sides of the road, and he sent a small contingent up, and there was Coffin's cavalry, and they basically rode up into the middle of them or close to them and did the, oh my God, there's cavalry, let's run away. And so they ran away. What does the human nature tell you to do? Hot pursuit. So you run right into the ambush. Coffin gets ambushed, loses about 20 men, falls back into Camden. And actually, at the end of the day, you're able to actually say that Greene's forces were able to go back to the battlefield. But it's claimed to be a tactical victory, and it was. It definitely was. Okay, let's look at this. The aftermath. British casualties, 29%. What were they at Guilford Courthouse? About 25%. What was the British center of gravity? Probably their troops, because they couldn't replace their troops. You got to remember that the Loyalists that were here, the Loyalists were not as responsive to the cause and the call as the Patriot side was. So therefore, you couldn't rely a lot on the Loyalists. The folks you see here, let me go back to a slide here. Let's see, maybe I skipped over it somewhere. Nope, I didn't. Never mind. Folks, that's what happens when I actually took this whole briefing and redid it last night. Okay? Anyway, we'll talk about this. Sir Henry Clinton thought it was the most important victory of the war. Oh, and one of the things I'll say about the ambush with Washington, we have a piece of property up here that's owned by General Burns. That will be the site where we're going to interpret that, and we have found archaeology that shows that an action took place there. Okay? Patriot casualties, about 26%. Okay? It was 26% from the initial part that was reported. Out of the approximately 270 men, over 100 of them showed back up at Sanders Creek after the battle. So that turned out pretty good. Okay, so we fight, get beat, rise, and fight again. Okay, and the slide that I was looking for, which I think was along with one of the earlier slides, if you look at Rawdon's forces, you had the 63rd Regiment of Foot and you had the artillery. Those two units were the only British forces on the battlefield that day. The rest of them were provincial troops, American loyalists. So you could say that this battle, you probably had the most Americans engaged in a set-piece battle of any other place during that time, with the exception maybe of Kings Mountain. So it was a tactical defeat for Greene, but a strategic victory. We fight, get beat, rise, and fight again. That shows that whole steadfastness of the American spirit. There are any times here where Greene could have said, hey, that's enough. Technically, if you look at Guilford Courthouse, Hobkirk Hill, 96, and Utah Springs, so Utah Springs is debatable. There were 4 tactical defeats, but each one of them was a strategic victory because you inflicted enough casualties on the British that did what you wanted them to do, which was fall back into Charleston. And they were there without conducting any offensive operations after the Battle of Utah Springs. You know, nothing that was a threatening offensive action. And technically what you're going to find is that the British Southern strategy was definitely won here because we defeated the Southern British strategy here. Okay, I throw this up. George Bancroft said this about South Carolina. He wrote the history of the United States. He started writing it in 1840. There were 3 major revisions. Went from 10 volumes to 6 volumes. Some folks thought they took out South Carolina's role in the American Revolution. I did the research myself and found that the volume 5, which was that I've got down there at the bottom, that was published in 1885. That this quote was in every one of his major editions. And I show everybody that because what I want you to know is the license tag that we have that says the Revolutionary War was won here. It's intended to do several things. First is to stir people to not just dismiss it, but to do your own research and find out. Because this is a critical thing for people to know. Suffered more, dared more, and achieved more than the men of any other state. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what are your questions? Sir?
Okay. First of all, drinking coffee from a saucer was very common in that era. In fact, one of the delegates to the Continental Congress signed Declaration Day during the sessions. And that quote, by the way, was on the 1976 bicentennial medal for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Where Greene and Pickens, he said that Sumter had been there at Hobkirk Hill at that 3-1. Do you concur?
I do. Hey, he would have had, he already outnumbered Rawdon. He would have had significantly more troops. He would have had more supplies and all this. And, you know, I don't like to bash Sumter constantly, but he does a good job of giving you ammunition.
So what locations was the Irish Volunteers position?
Okay, so if you're going up Littleton Street and you get to where Green Street comes in down here to the south, I think that they were over in that general area.
Green Street?
It's where, okay, Green Street does this and Green Street does this over on the other side of Littleton. Somewhere in that general area, I believe is where they were. Because when you had, oh, by the way, yeah, you had also Benjamin Ford, who commanded the 2nd Regiment, got hit in the elbow. It was actually turned out to be a mortal wound. That caused problems with his unit too. But they were wheeling. And the volunteers of Ireland came up and hit them pretty much in the flank as they were wheeling and were able to drive them off. So, the volunteers of Ireland and the light infantry were over to the east. Another question?
Where was that first contact with the skirmishers were? Was that over kind of like behind Kendall Mill someplace?
Okay, so actually, so if you go on, let me get my streets right here. Yeah. Okay, so you got Chestnut and Fair Street. At the corner of Chestnut and Fair Street, there's a tennis court. Okay, one of the artifacts that was found there some time ago was a heart badge. And that Hart badge was given out for bravery. It is thought that one of the Continental Light Infantry units, that one of their officers had received that, and that badge was found in the vicinity of the tennis courts. Okay, so whether it happened right there or not, I'm using that as where we would interpret that, and we were still working on some interpretive signage to go there.
I really did grow up
And it's one of these things when you look at it, if you're coming from Hobkirk Hill, so you've got, if you're looking Hobkirk Hill and you're looking to the west over towards Broad Street, where the rise is there, that ground where the houses are, that is pretty much, where the Continental positions were for the Maryland Brigade. And so, as you look at that location and you read about how they were trying to put their pickets and stuff out, it said that the Delaware troops were a short distance away, probably 100, 200 yards. Okay, fine. But the rest of the pickets were farther out, and I think that they were using Kirkwood to be able to maneuver, that they make contact and Kirkwood takes his 40 men or whatever to reinforce. I think that's pretty much how they were doing it. And, a lot of folks will put you along Pine Street there and say, well, they were here, the pickets were on Pine Street. There's only one problem with that. If you take a military eye and you look at that, you're putting yourself behind the crest of the hill there. So what you have to do is you got to get up to the crest of the hill, and the crest of that hill is going to put you somewhere closer to Chestnut. So it might not be exactly on Chestnut. Yeah.
So the polo field is not part of the Battleground?
Ma'am?
The polo field is not?
Okay, so the polo field, that is probably where Green and his guys were, some, and probably where Reed's militia were. Okay, and Reed's militia never got engaged. So essentially you had about 800 to 900. It was about a 1-to-1 engagement when you look at it from that perspective. And, I'm not sure if Green just didn't knew he couldn't count on the militia, or I'm not sure what his thought process was on that. And I think they were pretty well raw militia. And I think there was a bad taste in the mouth over some of the North Carolina Continentals and militia at Guilford Courthouse. So that could have been part of it.
Rick, thanks, excellent talk as usual. Is there a source with some archaeological work or so much development and much of that ever been done?
Yes, okay, so work has been done out there by Charles Baxley, David Rohr, John Allison, all those folks. And as a matter of fact, okay, so if you go to the west side on Green Street, of course, where the Kirkwood Hotel is, there's now going to be, did y'all realize there's going to be the Hobkirk Hill Park there? Okay, there's going to be a topographical map, interpretation, signage. If you go up there, there's a parking lot there. And people say, oh my God, you put a parking lot on a battlefield. Well, it was one of those things that there's been a hotel there for a long, long time and that sort of thing. And we did the archaeology. But anyways, if you're going that way and you turn to the left and you go in like you're going up there where Kirkwood was, there's a white house right down the hill. It's about 100 yards down the road, and down the hill there's a white house. And my wife and I actually looked at that house, and I was intrigued because it was right there on the battlefield. My wife was not. So consequently, we did not buy that house, but we go over and we're doing with John Allison and Larry Babbitts, who is an excellent historian, and other folks. And we get over there, and John points to the back of the house that I could have owned and says, there's a treasure trove of stuff in the backyard right there. Okay. No, I did not say anything bad to my wife. Folks, it's been my pleasure to talk to y'all. Thank you all for coming. And, on Saturday, we'll be over at Kirkwood Commons. The 18th of May, we will have the ribbon cutting for the park up on Hobkirk Hill. Now, that's kind of a phase one thing. We still got, we're gonna have a driving tour to have signage and stuff, so you can drive around and kind of see some of the places I talked about to you. And that won't be ready by then, but it's in the process of happening. Okay, I think y'all will like it. You will actually see the contours. Jim Lighthouser, who was the former president of the American Battlefield Trust, and David Duncan, who is the president of the American Battlefield Trust, we were up there, we did a tour. And you got to understand the world I live in. Met these folks over in Charleston. We did Marion Square. We did Fort Fairlawn. We did Fort Watson. We did Utah Springs, Fort Watson. And then we came over here and we did Hobkirk Hill. We did Camden. We did Hanging Rock, Waxhaws. And then we ended the day at, actually the next day at Blackstock Plantation. And oh, by the way, Blackstocks have come in too. That is going to be an outstanding battlefield. If you've never been to Blackstock Plantation, Sumter against Bannister Tarleton, Sumter victory, hey, highly encourage you to go. Hey, because the battlefield is, it's grown up, but I mean, as far as trees and stuff, but the whole open area where the Blackstock Farm is right there. And so, yes, we're trying to bring the Revolutionary War back to you in full living color.
Thank you.